Coming up on this edition of Cincinnati Connection, women are forming a united front as the marijuana industry gains steam. This morning, we are not only talking diversity, but decriminalization of marijuana in Ohio. We have representatives with Women Grow Ohio in studio to give their take on the growing issue. Cincinnati Connection starts right now.
Now, Cincinnati Connection, connecting you to your community.
Well, good morning, everyone. Just last month, the state of Ohio received more than 300 applications to operate dispensaries set to sell medical marijuana. Dozens of those applications came from surrounding counties, 17 in Hamilton, 11 in Butler, 5 in Warren counties. Out of those applications, 24 selected in very different locations across Ohio to set up shop. So now this medical marijuana program kicked off in Ohio just last year after legislation was signed by Governor John Kasich. Basically says Ohioans with one of 21 medical conditions can legally buy and use medical marijuana if it's recommended to them by a physician. But this could be the gateway to recreational pot. We are already seeing states with some stipulations like California, Alaska, Colorado, Massachusetts, Nevada, Oregon, D.C., and Washington state legalize recreational use. Again, though, with some stipulations. So this industry has proven to be very lucrative for those states. That case can be made definitely in Colorado, but with a growing industry comes some growing problems and how to properly profit from it, diversity, decriminalization, so many other issues. And here to talk about some of those problems and ways that we can really take on this issue is Shante Hopkins-Green, CEO and president of MyCanX, along with Lori Fry, a business and education advisor. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
I'm happy to have you here in Cincinnati Connection. Shante, wanted to start with you. You lead this group of women who advocate for affordable and legal access to medical marijuana. But do you see this industry taking a turn and making marijuana more available recreationally?
I do see legalization, especially on the federal level, coming probably within the next 10 years. We like to refer to it as adult use.
Okay.
We feel that marijuana should be regulated the same way alcohol is regulated, taxed and regulated for adult use and consumption. So I do believe that is the direction that the marijuana industry is going. So there will always be a medical program, even in states like Washington and Oregon and Colorado, where they have a thriving adult use program. There are still medical programs because there are benefits that patients receive for being in the medical programs that aren't available to just an adult user or consumer.
Well, we were having a conversation earlier, and we most definitely said that education is most certainly key when it comes to this. The marijuana market definitely expanding. While we are seeing a tolerance for marijuana, we are also seeing a number of people who believe expanding it recreationally could be dangerous. One of those people, Attorney General Jeff Sessions, he has said in the past, quote, "I am astonished to hear people suggest that we can solve our heroin crisis by legalizing marijuana so people can trade one life-wrecking dependency for another that's one slightly less awful." Lori, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we need to be very, very careful about how we characterize cannabis in general. We have a huge opioid crisis here in the state of Ohio and across the country, and we are learning that marijuana is not a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Nobody has ever died from a THC overdose. And actually there's research now that is telling us that we can use medical marijuana to help people get off of the opioids. So I think right now, while we're really building critical mass and getting good education out to the public, we need to be responsible about the messages that we're putting out there about the efficacy of marijuana in these different applications.
Shante, what are your thoughts?
I agree with everything that Lori said, and it's important to recognize that there is that the research is out there that does show that CBD in particular is really effective in treating the side effects, the withdrawals from opioid addiction. So I think that it's really important that we take a look at that. People say all the time that the research isn't there. It's there. It's just people are choosing to ignore the research that's out there. So it is really, really important that we're speaking from a place of having received some kind of education and training about the proper use of medical cannabis. So it's going to be critical that we get that education out there, that we get it out there not just to people who may become consumers or medical patients, but to the people who will exist in these communities with these people so they understand we are talking about patients, not just people who are using marijuana to get high, but these are real patients who are using it to treat symptoms.
And I'm glad you're bringing that up. When we talk about legalization and we talk about medical marijuana, what are the benefits here? What are the benefits that we're seeing economically and medically?
Well, as far as medical goes, marijuana has proven to be very helpful with pain relief. In particular, I personally am an advocate for children. I got into this industry researching cannabis treatment for my son. So it is helpful. CBD is very helpful for children who suffer from seizures, who suffer from ADD and ADHD. It is also very helpful for pain, and it helps with muscle spasms. So and those are just to name a few of the treatments that cannabis is effective for. In terms of economics, the taxes are extremely high. Communities benefit from the taxes that are collected on this, but it's also a new industry. It's bringing jobs into the community, good paying jobs. The state of Ohio did a really good job. The minimum hourly wage for a person working in a cannabis business in Ohio is $15 an hour. Wow. So these are really good jobs that are going to be created by all of these cannabis businesses. And there's not just earlier you mentioned the 300 plus application that were submitted. 24 of those were for licensed cultivators. Those were issued. Those licenses have already been granted. There'll be another 60 dispensary licenses that will be granted sometime probably next year, and then an additional 40 processing licenses. In addition to that, the state is going to grant licenses to businesses to be testing labs. Okay. So this is going to bring quite a few good paying jobs into communities around Ohio. Okay, we're going to continue this conversation in just a couple of minutes. And now that marijuana is growing more mainstream, we have to ask the big question, who is profiting from it all? And you know what? It all relates to the picture that you're about to see here. That's coming up next on Cincinnati Connection. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Cincinnati Connection. We continue our conversation on mainstream marijuana growth in Ohio. Several dispensaries, as we mentioned earlier, are set to open up across the state. But I want to take a look at just who is taking advantage of this latest wave of dispensary owners. And we'll actually kind of break down exactly what this means. But take a look at this picture. This is a picture that was taken at one of the largest business conferences for legal marijuana in Las Vegas. But some shared the article with me, which was originated from Forbes.com, because the picture depicts a problem growers are seeing in the industry. There were reportedly 18,000 cannabis entrepreneurs and investors on the floor at this conference, but it was reportedly mostly white males. And when the women did gather, you got this, mostly white women. We welcome back Shantae Hopkins-Green, CEO and president of MyCanX, along with Lori Fry, business and education advisor. You guys were telling me a little bit earlier regarding the dispensaries that are opening. Can you clarify exactly, what this means now that we have this 24 licenses basically that were given out across Ohio? Well, in terms of the licenses that were issued in Ohio, again, Ohio did a good job to try to address the issue of diversity. They have written into the law that 15% of all licenses issued would go to historically disadvantaged groups. Okay. So that does mean minorities, that means women, that means veterans, people with disabilities. So it's really important that everyone recognize that this industry should be diverse, that it should be reflective of the people that we are servicing and who are patronizing these businesses. I will say that one of the issues in this industry is the high cost of licensing, and people see that as a barrier to entry.
Okay.
And that is why a lot of times minorities won't even attempt to apply for these licenses. One of the things I'm most proud of is my company, MyCanX, as consultants, we do application writing. So in Maryland in particular, my company had 3 clients. They were all minorities, and they all won their licenses. So they will all be dispensary owners. But what we have to do is go out and educate people and make sure that they understand that these barriers aren't actually barriers, even to the licensing. There are certain teams that tend to be more successful, and as a layperson, you may not know what that looks like. So you really want to go out and find someone who has some knowledge of the industry to kind of help you put together a team that will be competitive, and then you can seek the funding to support your team to get the licenses. But in that picture that you just had up on the screen, a really good friend of mine who is a minority woman and owns a dispensary was the keynote speaker at that conference.
Okay.
She obviously was not a member of this group, but she is a minority. So I think that we are starting to see a little bit more diversity in the industry, but I think that it's a lack of education and making sure that minorities and a lot of other disadvantaged communities understand that there are opportunities beyond just the licenses to grow the cannabis or to sell the cannabis or process. There are many opportunities in the industry, and that's really what Lori specializes in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, one of the things that we really, really want to get the word out with people is just because there are licenses for cultivator, processor, dispensary, et cetera, there are lots of jobs needed to support those core licenses. So if you think about transportation or you think about HR or training, there's all kinds of support systems that are needed in this industry because it's brand new. So I've heard Shante say many times, and it's absolutely true, whatever you're doing today can be applied to this industry.
Okay.
It starts with making sure that you understand what the rules and regulations are of the industry first, and then mapping what you do over to that industry. So,
but isn't that one of the big problems, and one of the reasons why you guys started Women Ohio, why they have Women Ohio, to maybe support an opportunity for empowerment and knowledge for people to know about this industry?
Absolutely, and part of what we do at Women Grow is we bring in industry experts from other states who are, and I'm sorry, I don't like to call us experts because even myself, I've been in this industry 4 years, but this industry is still in its infancy, so I don't feel there really are any experts out here yet. There are some of us who know a lot more than others, but we're learning more every day, and as new states come online, the regulations and the laws are different.
Yeah.
But what we do with our Women Grow monthly networking meetings is it is about empowering women, educating women about the different opportunities in the cannabis industry as a whole.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to that. Lori, you were talking about some of the opportunities that are available, right?
yes, absolutely. And it's not just knowing about the industry itself, it's knowing how to start a business too.
Yeah.
So when we think about folks who have maybe always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but they don't know that they need to go to the Secretary of State and register, they don't know what articles of incorporation, those can be very overwhelming. And quite honestly, it's not that expensive to do. So what we do in our meetings is talk about not only what types of opportunities are out there and what types of businesses would be appropriate for the industry or helpful to the industry, but it's getting people to think outside the box and then helping guide them through the steps to actually get a business stood up and the things that they need to think about.
Do you feel like that's why we have such an issue when it comes to legislation under marijuana? It's more of an issue of misunderstanding and misrepresentation versus there actually being a problem with with marijuana. One of the things you mentioned to me a little bit earlier was we were talking about using cannabis oil as a way to help with certain medical conditions. And some people don't remember that cannabis oil doesn't actually have the, what is it, THC?
Well, certain cannabis oil does not. There's CBD and there's THC. And the two they work together. So a CBD oil, oil that is mostly CBD, it's going to have a small amount of THC in it just to kind of activate the CBD, but it's not enough to be effective. So in other words, it's not going to be a product that gets you high. For example, Charlotte's Web is very popular. Many children with seizure disorders are treated with Charlotte's Web. It's a very high CBD oil. So children are given this to stop their seizures. There are children out there who've been seizure-free for years from taking this Charlotte's Web strain. So I think that it's really important that the education on consuming, the education on business opportunities that are available, bringing those to the public. And we understand that, you know, while this is kind of our bubble, it's not for everyone else. So we have to lead with that education, and that's what Women Grow is all about.
All right, we're going to have to continue this conversation in just 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. So now we look towards the future. Where is the marijuana industry basically going or growing? With more states legally opening the floodgates for dispensaries to open, how does one get in on the multi-million-dollar game? We want to bring back Shantae Hopkins-Green and Lori Fry. You know, Lori, we were just having a conversation in the break and talking about the stigma of marijuana. And that's one of the reasons why so many people are still sort of iffy in order to jump into this.
That's absolutely right. There are people who need this medicine who will not take it simply for the stigma that it brings with it. And one of the things that we're passionate about is really, we talked about education, but beyond education, using words and talking about it in a way that destigmatizes it so people will step away from what their preconceptions of it were to something that is very useful to them. And I think we all of us in the industry need to contribute to that, even as we think about the names of our businesses and the way we talk about the medicine. So yes, I think destigmatizing this is going to be an ongoing thing for us for quite some time.
And one of the things I did want to mention to you guys a little bit earlier, of course, I've seen this on the ACLU's website as well. They've done some research just looking at the number of minorities that are picked up for marijuana use, marijuana possession. Is it a matter of decriminalizing marijuana in order for people to feel like, okay, this is okay? Or even if you decriminalize it, do people still believe that they just can't touch this stuff?
Again, that's all about education and people understanding their rights. Marijuana has been decriminalized in Ohio for a number of years. And I don't want to get this wrong, but I believe Ohio is a state where if you have up to 6 ounces of marijuana, it's not a jailable offense.
Okay.
Now, decriminalization is different than being legal. You can still be ticketed. There may be escalating fines or penalties, and there's no protection for your employment under decriminalization.
Okay.
If you are a medical patient and you are using it legally, many times when you take a drug test, if you test positive for THC, the lab will contact you and ask you, do you have a prescription? It's actually a recommendation. Physicians aren't able to prescribe it. But if you are under a doctor's care and you are in a legal program, in many cases, it will not affect your employment. You don't have those same protections under decrim laws. Something else that I think that's very important that we should address when it comes to minorities and why there aren't as many minorities participating in the program as there should be, is we have to address the suffering that minorities have experienced through prohibition.
Yeah.
With marijuana and other drugs being illegal, it has been minorities who have bear the brunt of the arrests, the harsh convictions and jail terms and sentences. And now that there's an opportunity to profit from this, I think that there's so much suspicion about, you know, this is really just another way for the government to monitor me. People need to understand that this really and truly is a legal market. And states have put protections in place for legal business owners. It is still illegal on the federal level, so it's really important to take the time to know your state legislation.
Yes.
And know the difference between what's legal in your state and the federal laws, and you stay within those laws, and the states really will protect you.
Okay. You know, something I wanted to ask you guys, you know, cannabis, does it introduce another avenue for women to advance in entrepreneurship in this country?
Absolutely.
It absolutely does. I think we have an opportunity to step out and lead it as well. Again, this is the ground floor of this industry. There are, especially if you think about starting these ancillary businesses, one of the things that I believe I read it in Harvard Business Review or Atlantic or one of the magazines, they were talking about the lack of representation of women in certain fields, and a lot of it is linked to our roles as wives and mothers. And you'll see more women pharmacists because they can work in the off hours, right, for 24-hour pharmacies. The same thing with ancillary businesses. If we're opening these businesses and we're able to create a way of building a business and earning an income on our own terms and in times that work for us, that just creates more opportunities for everybody.
Just real quickly on to you, Shantae. So how are we seeing women around the country collaborate? Have about a minute left.
Well, again, there are organizations like Women Grow. We are also, I'm also a part of a group called Canna Moms. We are going to be bringing our parenting and cannabis here to Ohio. It's really important that women have the support from other women, because this is a challenging industry. It's illegal on the federal level, and then it's male dominated, as with most industries. But I think it's really important that all of us women who are currently in the industry, and we have seen some success, are here to support and mentor other women. Every time we have a Women Grow event, I have young women coming up to me asking, can I shadow you? How can you help me to get into the business? So we're going to be doing some workshops in and around Ohio to help women with a lot of the things that Lori mentioned, just starting a business, whatever you're doing right now. If you're a bookkeeper, we need accountants that specialize in 280E. If you're an administrative person, you could start your own administrative business, because these small businesses can't afford to hire full-time admins or full-time assistants. So many of them use small businesses, and they will all use the same person. So there are opportunities for women, and we just want to be out there supporting them and mentoring these women.
All right, thank you both for joining us. We'll be right back. Well, thank you guys for watching Cincinnati Connection. We will see you all next week.